Welcome back, y'all, to Tim Talks Christian Rock. Tim Risto here. Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode here in my interview series where I interview bands, artists, and various individuals in the Christian rock and metal scene. So glad to have you all here with me today. Today, I'm welcoming singer, songwriter, producer, engineer, multi-instrumentalist, writer, fellow creative actually, and a man of deep introspective faith, Thomas McKeown. Some of you may be familiar with Tom from his 80s and 90s band Damascus, which released, I believe, 4 albums. Roxx Records actually released a great anthology on CD back in 2024, this one here. I'll put links in the description if you want to pick that up. He's also half of the songwriting duo, along with Heather Humphrey, of the Americana folk rock band called Shadowfields. Started in 2012, and I think that's released, they've released 4 albums as well, if I have that correct. Tom has also produced albums for other artists as well. His latest creative work, a solo album, is this one right here, Undoubting Thomas, in the process of. A fantastic, and I truly mean that, return to his progressive rock roots. And a progressive rock masterpiece, in my humble opinion, for sure. One of my top favorite releases of 2025, and that was also released through Roxx Records. We'll talk more about that. We're going to get into this album quite a bit today, so I look forward to talking to Tom about that. And before I welcome Tom onto the show, a quick reminder to my viewers, if you would, please take a moment to like this video, share it, even leave a comment if you feel so inclined. It would be greatly appreciated. Any and all those things go a long ways to helping my channel. If you leave a comment, let Thomas know what you think about his music and his album or about my channel. Please be kind, y'all. But take a moment to do that, like and share with someone you love, and leave a comment for Tom or me. So, with that said, let's get to it. I had the opportunity to actually guest co-host with Kent over at Area 312 Rock and Metal Vodcast last year and get to meet Tom and interview him along with John De Laurentiis too. But today, I'm so excited to welcome Thomas McKeown of Undoubting Thomas to Tim Talks Christian Rock and get to talk to him personally. So Tom, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim. And already you're wrong. You've already blown the show.
All right, correct me.
Shadowfields started in 2006.
2006.
This
Wow.
is the 20th anniversary. And we are about 3/4 of the way through writing our 8th album.
Oh my gosh, you've got way more albums than I thought.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So
2006. So, and was Heather part of the duo from the beginning?
she is Shadowfields. It's she and
She
I.
is Shadowfields.
And then we surround ourselves with other great guys.
Right. Oh, fantastic. Well, I was listening to a little of that, some of the music from your band there, and last night, as a matter of fact, and it's really cool.
Well, thank you.
So I would encourage others to check that out too, and I'll put a link to that in the description as well. But you know, we're going to hit the ground running here today,
Okay.
if that's okay with you. I'm going to start out with a quote, actually from your website, where you say, "Music should take you on a journey, whether happy or sad. It must make you feel something." And I love that. You know, music is that universal language, right? But it's also this amazing God-given gift that, you know, he created for us to play in, to create in, and to use to reach others too. You know, feelings, of course, emotions, which is part of that we communicate through. But I also think God, you know, expects us to be good stewards of the gifts and the talents and the different creative entities he's given us. So, you know, first up, what maybe are some ways that you've kind of strived to be a good steward of this gift of music?
That's a big one right off the bat, huh?
I told you I'd hit the ground running.
Like, where were you born? Oh, I can answer that one. I do believe that God gives us gifts, and He expects those gifts to be used for His glory in some way.
Right.
I don't know if we ever talked about this before, but for 20 years, I was a worship director at two different churches. 20 years, that was a long time.
It is.
And I only got into it because I had the skill, the gifts, and they needed somebody.
Yeah.
And because I didn't feel a particular calling to do that. You know, some people feel like some giant thing, like, you know, I'm called to do this and I must do this. I didn't feel that. I just felt like, well, I have the necessary skills to pull this off, and they really need somebody. And so I'm just going to jump in and do my best. And obviously I didn't do too badly because it lasted 20 years.
20 years. Yeah. It's a good gig right there.
So I definitely, I believe in using your gifts and for the glory of God, no matter what you're doing, whether it's in the Christian world or market or whatever, or if it's just in the secular market. You know, Shadowfields is not a Christian band, though Heather and I are both Christians. Yeah. But we don't, that's not what our aim is at. We're trying to get a bit broader reach, I guess. And so we're trying to use our gifts in that way to reach people. And we have found that, you know, through traveling around the country, that a lot of Christians will come up and say that never saw us before, and they'll say, "Are you guys Christians?" It's like, how could you tell? Don't know. There's just something we could just tell. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because we don't swear enough on stage. But
that's probably what it is. I love
that. And I also, you know, as a producer, I help other artists that can't really afford to go to any large major studios, and I help them create the best art that they could possibly create. And I feel that I feel strongly in promoting that as well.
How do you foster your creative process? What does that look like for you as an artist, as a musician, as a songwriter?
Wow. Sometimes I feel like it's a mystery, because where does great art really come from? You know, some people think that it comes from them. I absolutely don't think that. I've mentioned them multiple times to guys in Shadowfields. Like we'll have a song. There's a song called "Eyes Shut." It's a very sad song, but it's a beautiful song. And I look at these guys. We're in rehearsal. And we're joking around, and I say, "How did a bunch of goofs come up with this?" Because it didn't come just from us. I feel like, you know, God is the giver of everything. For me, it's time. And, you know, I don't believe that any of the gifts that I have come from myself. And in order to, you know, get in touch with the emotions that I want to put into the music, it just takes time, non-stress time. Some people work great under stress. I don't work very well under stress at all. Yeah. And so it usually happens late at night. I'll be sitting alone here in the studio, have everything surrounding me, and I'll just start thinking. And then, you know, either some piano idea comes to me or something else, and that'll start me down a path. And sometimes the lyrics are very last, sometimes they're right away. And but you know, some songs, you know, like, have the whole idea, and always I have an idea of what I want to say, but not the exact words. So I don't know if that helps out a little bit.
It does, yeah. And I'm always curious. It's usually a question I ask too, is, you know, do the words come first or the music? And I know it can vary by song, by album, you know, of course, but different people work different ways. And I know some artists like to write the music first and then add the lyrics to that. Others like to, of course, they have the lyrics already written and then try and develop the music to that. But
I would definitely say that it's easier for me, if I have the words first,
Yeah.
because the words dictate where I'm going to go. When I was with Damascus, Dave Coy, the drummer from Damascus, he wrote about half the lyrics. And I would just go on vacation with a stack of his lyrics and a keyboard, and I'd have it all set up, and I would just write the albums that way. And it's very easy that way because words have a meter to them when you start reciting them. They got a meter, so that tells you what time signature I'm going to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it much easier that way. But unfortunately, that doesn't always happen that way, because sometimes, like on my album, there's a song called Dark Waters.
Yeah.
And I knew what I wanted to say in the song, but I didn't have the words until basically I had a microphone in front of me and the music was done, and it was like, and then just poured out. But I didn't have anything written before that.
Yeah.
But I knew what the theme of the song was.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, by the way, bringing up the album again in the process of. Thank you for creating this incredible album. I absolutely love this, as you know. In the process is just a fantastic album. Very much in the vein of, of course, Kansas, A.D., Carrie Livgren. They're all interconnected. Yes, and some other great prog rock bands, but really very much your own style too, which I love. I mean, you draw upon influences, but it's very much Thomas McKeown. It's very much Undoubting Thomas. I love that. It's just so creative and inventive and fresh, even though it has these retro elements and aspects to it. In my opinion, this album just will stand the test of time. So, first of all, just thank you for creating such a wonderful masterpiece of an album. Let's talk a little bit about that music first. You come from, and I think you've commented on this too before, you come from a much more melodic, kind of harmonic structure of music. That's kind of your style, your preference. How do you find your melodies? Where do you start, and what kinds of things inspire you towards those melodies? Just in day-to-day life, are there things that you get hooks from or melodies from, or how does that work for you?
Wow. I don't know that I know exactly where the melodies are coming from.
Yeah.
I know basically, as far as my musical journey, how it all changed over the years. Starting with, my mother, who played the organ and she played piano. And so early childhood memories would be of her playing, I don't know who wrote it, but there's a piano piece called Rustle of Spring. It's a big flourishy thing on piano. I loved it. And I loved when she played that. And so that kind of got me into music, and of course I couldn't play. I was just a kid. And so, we would of course take off the covers from the piano and like hit the strings with whatever pencils and things like that to make noises. And my musical journey started at that and kept growing and growing. And I've always wanted to challenge myself. By junior high, I was into, like harder rock things. Well, by the time I was 8, when In-A-Gadda-Da Vida came out, that was it for me. And I bought that. I had my parents buy me that album when I was 8, and I wore it out and got a little drum set and beat it until it was destroyed. And then my dad got rid of it. He was very happy to get rid of that drum set.
Yeah.
But then, then get into Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin. And then at some point I just became, I don't know if I'd say bored, unchallenged maybe, with the music. And I wanted to hear something a bit deeper. That's when I started hearing, like Yes and Genesis, and especially Kansas. Kansas, I think, mostly for the lyrical content. Carrie Livgren, beyond being just a great guitarist and keyboard player and writer, but his words meant something more. John Anderson from Yes, wonderful, great singer, it's mystical fairy stuff though. And for
Right.
me, some of his words didn't touch me. I liked the music a lot, but the
Yeah.
words didn't really do it completely for me. Um, and so got into that, and then I worked for a chain of music stores for I don't know 6-7 years,
Yeah.
and I sorted through records, and so every day I'd come home with another album, and at night I would stick on that album and I just listen to music with headphones on in bed, and that's how I'd go to sleep. Is I'd always listen to a full album, and after listening to all as much prog as I could and
Yeah.
classic rock, then I started getting into classical and just found this huge love of Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev, Russian,
Oh, yes.
depressing Russian composers.
That's cool. Now that you mention that, I can kind of hear a little of that influence even in the style of your music a little bit. I mean, it's subtle, but that's interesting.
Yeah, but their use of melody and how to they create themes, and they'll revisit those themes later, but they'll revisit them in a different way than they originally set out to do it. It might
Right.
start simple and might end with something much more than that. And
Yeah.
there's a dramaticism in what classical music is doing. That changed my life was when I found classical music, and I started just diving into that, and that was years of my life, every single night, just listening to the six symphonies of Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, Isle of the Dead, still one of my favorite pieces.
Beautiful. Wow. I love that. I remember you bring up classical music. I remember when I first discovered not discovered, but really got hooked by classical music was in college, and my roommate and I had the radio on one night, kind of just drifting off to sleep, and all of a sudden this great musical piece comes on. It had these choral elements to it. It was just very moving. It would be low at points and then peak at others. This great piece, and I said, "What is this?" And I waited till the end, and then the DJ comes on and for the classical station and announces who it was, and it was Franz Liszt's Symphony to Dante's Divine Comedy. And it was such a gorgeous piece, these choral elements to it, and just this sweep and epicness to it. And I was like, that is one of the most beautiful pieces I've ever heard. And I was hooked on classical music from then on. And then got into, who is it? There's A Night on Bald Mountain.
Mussorgsky, did he write that?
Yes, I think so. So anyway, I love that I don't hear a lot of rock artists. I think it may be true, or maybe of some progressive rock artists, but that have that kind of draw. That's really fascinating. I love that you have that depth of background with classical music.
Do you ever find it interesting though that you on the one hand you've got this classical music that is so intense and so basically you need some real great players to even pull that off at all.
Right.
And then you have like right now the most popular music makes nursery rhymes sound like they're really advanced.
It's a great reflection. Yes, so true.
It's a strange thing that music has devolved into this lowest common denominator thing where I don't know, I find it a little bit depressing because there is some interesting things being written at this point, but a lot of it is a formula and the same guys churning out the same stuff, and they don't say anything that what is it going to mean to anybody in even a year from now.
So true. I find it interesting that the point at which we kind of could stop defining the music of a generation by the decade is when stuff started to kind of, I mean, some things got a little more interesting because you didn't have to feel you had to perform to a certain style of music for the decade. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that, too, I think became more of a natural outgrowth of things. 50s was the sock op rock or whatever, and 60s was, well, for Christian music, Jesus music started coming about, but it was, the hippie music, and, 70s was disco or whatever. They weren't strictly that, but those decades were defined by a certain kind of style of music. And then after, 2000, 2010, really, what's the predominant form of music? You could still say, I guess, hip hop and stuff like that, but it's really not. It's just kind of this amalgam of things, but what really rises to the surface? So I find that interesting, because I think it's harder to say this is great music or this is great music, because it's very the lines are blurred very much now, I find, in terms of the genres of music that define a generation or a decade.
A lot of people, they like a lot of different things, and
Right,
you can listen
right.
to this hip hop thing, or you can listen to something else that is completely unrelated,
Yeah,
where you don't have to be put into these silos anymore,
right.
which I think is a great thing.
Yeah,
I wish there was some way for artists, and especially younger artists, to monetize in some way without like selling their souls to the industry, because how do you get noticed? For a lot of these people, they feel like they must be an influencer before they can be a musician or an artist, and which kind of dilutes the message at that point, to
so
me.
true. I want to continue on with In the Process Of, because again, I just think it's a phenomenal album. Let's start with a little bit about some lyrics here on this too. And this is, I think, something you said in that Area 312 podcast interview that I helped guest host with. But you said, if my lyrics come across sounding too religious or trite, I don't want to use them. I want to convey a common human experience. I want them to be fresh. I don't want to say anything trite or cliched. And you said, when I needed the lyrics, usually late at night, they just came to me. And you made reference to that earlier too. How do you develop your lyrics, and where do some of your, as an extension of that, where do some of your themes and ideas kind of seem to develop from?
From Melancholy. Some people are all happy and sunshine, and there's always been a certain cloud over my life and over to me mentally, and so it just takes me certain places. And especially on this album, there's a common unhappiness theme through it. Unhappiness with the world, unhappiness with my relationship with God, unhappiness with a multitude of things. And I have insomnia, and so I'm laying awake at night an awful lot, and you just start thinking, and some ideas come into my brain at some point, things that I've been thinking about, and so they'll be there, and they'll be just rumbling around, and they'll be rumbling around for the longest time until they're ready to come out. But going back to what you originally said, I am really aware of not wanting to be, I don't want to speak Christian-ese,
Right.
because I view myself as an artist who's a Christian.
Right.
I don't consider myself a Christian artist because I don't want to work in the Christian industry. I'm not. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
It does. I know exactly what you're saying. We get caught up in labels so often.
Yeah.
Because we have to use them to identify things or talk about things or whatever. But that shouldn't be the defining characteristic or trait, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When Damascus was around for a decade, we met with many managers and record companies and stuff like that, and we wanted to be in the Christian market at that point.
Yeah.
But to them, we were too far outside the mainstream of what they're looking for, which unfortunately they were looking for at the time. They were looking for somebody who sounded like Bruce Springsteen. And they said, well, if you could sound like Bruce Springsteen, we have a place for you. And it's like, well, there is a Bruce Springsteen. Why do we need another?
Right. Exactly.
I don't feel that need for that. The Christian market, why is it trying to mimic the world. Why do you need like, oh, here's the Christian Led Zeppelin or something? Why would you
Right.
need that? Led
Exactly.
Zeppelin's fine on their own. We don't need a Christian version of that. We need a Christian version that's better than all that. You
Yes.
know,
Exactly.
if you want to go back to like, one of the fathers of Western music would be Bach, and
Mm-hmm.
his music is anything but simple.
Right.
It took music to a completely different level, and I feel that in some small way, I want what I do to take things to a different level.
Yes.
If
I
that makes
totally
any
agree with
sense.
that. No, that's spot on. And you're absolutely right. I think every artist should be striving in their own originality and their own creativity and their own gifts and talents. And you're exactly right. The Christian industry that grew up, I think, especially, or that took off in the '80s and the like, and beyond, was so focused on that very thing we talked about, mimicking other artists. Well, yeah, we need to sound like this because there was a marketing element behind it many times, and this isn't across the board. I know there were genuine people in the industry too, but so much of it gets overtaken by people looking for money and power and to just kind of capitalize on the latest trend, right? We still have that going on today in many ways. But yeah, every artist really should be just striving to be original and deliver excellence. And I have to say, again, that's one thing that really for me comes out of this album. Again, there's those influences from clearly artists that you've been influenced by and sounds that you've heard, but it has an originality to it that is just, again, so fresh and inventive and creative. It's very much you. And I love that. If more artists were striving for that as opposed to those that are trying to just mimic a sound, I think that diversity of music would continue to grow and get richer all the time, especially in the Christian music world. But I love that. I think that's spot on. That is exactly.
But I think you were right in that it comes down to marketing.
Yeah.
In order for record labels to stay in business back in the 80s, they had
Right.
to be able to sell.
Yeah.
And how could they, in the Christian world, it was selling, forgeries of other artists.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we weren't into that as Damascus. So
Yeah.
we weren't Christian enough for the Christian market,
Yeah.
what they considered that to be.
Right.
But, you have to decide if you want to be true to yourself and true to who God made you to be, or if you want to be, have your 15 minutes of fame or whatever.
Right.
Because, look back in those artists that were in the 80s, how many of them are still around? They might have got popular for a time,
Right.
but when they faded away for good.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think it was, at least in my mind, it was better to stay true to my calling and what I felt that God put on me. Because at the end of the day, I have to be happy with the music, because I don't have millions of fans or anything like that, but I want to play music and write music that I want to hear.
Yeah. Well, I love how you're doing that on this latest album. Speaking of Damascus there for a minute too, what do you think really was, I mean, you mentioned a couple items there, what do you think really was the greatest challenge for y'all? Why did Damascus have to kind of close up when it did, and what were the challenges of that time, since you were in that time period, the 80s and 90s, when Christian rock and Christian music was kind of, taking off? What were some of the challenges of that time?
I don't think the Christian market was ready for an adventurous musical project like Damascus was.
Right.
We didn't have the gear early on to make records the way we wished we could make them.
Right.
We had the ideas in our head, and we did our best with our limited gear that we had, but we didn't have a lot of money. Everything was shoestring. Until the last album, when we finally were able to do it 8 tracks. I think about some of the stuff on a few of the Undoubting Thomas songs. There might have been 100 tracks or more, 120 tracks. And I think that back in the 80s, I was trying to do it. Most everything was on a 4-track, and then eventually 8 tracks. I just don't think the market was ready for us. Record labels didn't know what to do with us. They didn't know how to market it. And we had just entered, that time when all progressive bands became like dinosaurs. Nobody wanted to hear any progressive music anymore.
Yeah.
It was a bad time to be in prog rock.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, especially the '90s when grunge started taking off, and then
Well, the '90s started turning things around because by the mid '80s, it was getting harder and harder, and in right after our fourth album, Mark, our guitar player, he decided to take a job in Oregon, and so he left, and we became a trio, and we did a trio for a couple years, and played a handful of shows, and we were working on a fifth album when Dave, the drummer, was like, we just aren't getting anywhere. We cannot get over that wall that seems to be in front of us. And so he pulled the plug at that point, and it was a sad thing. But by the mid '90s, progressive music started coming back around. That's when Spock's Beard and the Flower Kings, and for me, Porcupine Tree came around, and I didn't even know that these people were around at that point, progressive music, because I know they were all 90. We ended at the beginning of '93.
Yeah.
By '94 to '96, a lot of these progressive groups started coming up.
Right.
I didn't know about it because by that time I'd sold off my keyboards. I bought a house. I had kids, and I'd given up that anything was ever going to happen with music ever again.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was telling you before that I became a worship director at a church, and that was in '97. So there was this whole chunk of time from when my son was born in '92 to '97. It was 5 years. My kids didn't even know that I was a musician. They had no idea that I was a musician. Yeah. I was just the guy that worked on the house all the time.
That other hat you wore was a little more on the back burner in some ways.
Yeah. But, when I finally got back into music, and then I started looking up, is there any recent prog rock groups? And I started finding all these. And I think it was Porcupine Tree's In Absentia. That was the first piece of progressive music that I bought again. It had been years, been a decade since I'd touched anything. Yeah. And that was like, wow, there are people putting out music that I'm actually interested in. And I don't know how this can possibly sell, but
that's right.
Stephen Wilson worked for years just to try to build up to that point where they could start selling. But that got me back into the prog thing, but at that point, Damascus had been done. It was a sad note, it wasn't. We didn't go out on a high. We kind of went out on a. We just give up. Yeah. Kind of throw in the towel and let's move on to other things.
Did that start you thinking at that point about, going as a solo artist, going out as a solo artist at some point, or developing solo material?
Not at first. By 2000, I started getting a bit more of an idea that, I'd like to do some music on my own again. I wrote an album for one of the churches that I was at. I wrote an album of worship music that I did for the church, and we released that. And, I guess it sold a couple thousand copies. And it just started to make me think more about, how much I love working in the studio, and that I love writing. And but it was still many years of nothing real progressive. The song from the album The Mirror, that came into my head somewhere around that point, just noodling around, and all of a sudden that was like, oh, I really like that. But that sat for over 20 years without
Wow.
anything happening with it because I had no outlet for it.
Yeah.
And I finally, when I moved churches as a worship director, that's where I met Heather. And I'd asked a bunch of people if anybody wanted to write music. Just looking for somebody with a common interest so I could have a partner in this.
Yeah.
Nobody was interested. But a week later, Heather came back and said that she was interested. And I was thinking, how could this possibly work? And because we're so different from each other. I come from that progressive background and she comes from musical theater. But there's some
connective tissue there.
Yeah. Because they're both trying to tell stories and they both can be pretty advanced musically.
Both have some theatricality to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that got me into that. And so we started off as Humphrey McKeown because we wanted to write for publishers at first, thinking that we were going to become big famous writers just for Nashville. We even went down to Nashville and spent a week in Nashville and knocked on every door and talked with our rep at BMI and said, all right, what are we going to do to break in? And it turned out not so great. They just played us the worst bro country music, and they said, we need you to write 300 of these a year. I'm like, I can't even stomach one of those. So we realized at that point that was not our path. So we came back home and decided to start doing albums on our own. And sets kind of flourished from there. And we've had basically the same band for about 10 years at this point now. Fantastic. And we're on the 8th album. But getting back into progressive music, it had been in the back of my mind, and I listened to progressive music. I'm a huge Flower Kings fan. Ronnie Stolt is one of my favorite guitar players. Nice. He's not a shredder, but he has melody, and you can hum back his guitar solos, and I like that. You can do the same thing with Brian May from Queen. He wasn't a shredder. No. I remember when Yngwie Malmsteen came out in the 80s.
Yes.
The first time I heard him, he was on an Alcatraz album. I think it was a live Alcatraz thing or something. And I was just knocked out. I was totally floored because I've never heard anybody play like that before. That neoclassical, but that's absolute 100% shredding.
Yeah.
And while I could respect that and I could appreciate it, I never wanted to emulate that. It just never meant anything to me.
That's a great point. I think, of course, I'm a big Pink Floyd fan. David Gilmour, I think is often said he's never been, a shredder or anything like that. And so he just kind of played to his strengths, of more of that kind of methodical or thoughtful or, that moody and jazzy very kind of at times. Yes. And I love that, because he's not there to show off per se. He just kind of leans into his strengths as what he, as a musician, feels is the way he can play and wants to play, and doesn't pretend to be, this shredder guitar. So I love that.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, that's why the ending guitar solo on "Comfortably Numb."
Yeah.
Why that's still rated as one of the best guitar solos of all time. Exactly. 50 years later, you would think that somebody would be surpassing that. But it's so memorable because it's expressive, it's lyrical, it's like you could sing it, So
yes, exactly.
And I try to think in that same way. I love David Gilmour, but I got to say that out of all the guitar players, I love David Gilmour, I like Ronnie Stolt, I love Jeff Beck. When Wired came out when I was in high school, I was like, wow, this is a game changer. Nobody played like that. But other than just little pieces, I never bothered to learn anybody else's music.
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird, but
Do you
from the
feel it
start.
tainted your perceptions more, or your creative process more, or you just kind of knew what you wanted to lean into or step into, or
Yeah, I think that was it, and I don't think it was laziness,
yeah,
but I I guess I kept thinking, if I'm going to have to play these songs over and over and over, I want them to at least be mine. You
right,
know, good, bad, or indifferent. I want them to be mine. I don't want them to be somebody else's music that I'm just mimicking. 'Cause I still can't do that. You know,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think Shadowfields, I think we, over the entire 20 years together, I think we've learned 12 cover songs just to appease some venues that we played at.
yeah,
But other than that, I have no desire to play other people's music.
right,
It just,
yeah,
I don't want to be another guitar player. I don't want to be another singer.
yeah,
I remember there was a time in my life, I guess it was late high school. Uh, I think like Point of No Return came out from Kansas, and I'd saw Kansas like a million times. And Steve Walsh was my favorite singer of all time. Uh, and I remember wishing I could sing like Steve Walsh. But anymore, I don't have that desire to be anybody else, sound like anybody else. I don't want to learn their stuff. I remember Robin Trower was in an interview, because you remember Robin always got compared to Hendrix, and everybody like, oh, he sounds just like Hendrix, because he used the um, uh, what is the vibe? It's now a Deja vibe, but
oh, the style, you mean, kind of
the pedal,
the playing style.
the
Oh, oh,
Mutron
oh,
pedal that he plays a lot. And so he got compared to Hendrix a lot, and he used a wah pedal and things like that. But in interviews, he says, I don't even know any Hendrix songs. I've never played any. And Robin Trower was also another huge influence on me.
yeah.
His live album, I literally wore that out twice.
I love it. That's fabulous. Do you have any aspirations of like, or have you? Maybe you have. I don't even know. Connected with or played with like Livgren or John
I
Elefante. These former Kansas guys.
I should probably not even say it, but before I started Damascus, I was a huge Kansas fan. I remember Steve Walsh quit. Steve Walsh started a band called Streets when he went solo. I can't remember the drummer. The drummer from that band, I worked with his girlfriend.
Oh,
And she was the
really?
one who told me, she said, by the way, Kansas is holding auditions in Atlanta. Um, yeah, I know you're a big Kansas fan. Maybe you should go down and audition for that.
Yeah,
And I ended up not doing that.
yeah,
Um, I think John Elefante was infinitely more capable and qualified to be the singer in Kansas at that point in time.
that's cool.
Um,
You were this close.
yeah. That was a kind of a deciding point in my life, because
Yeah,
I'd worked that up in my mind that I was going to go do that,
yeah,
and I do remember praying that night. There was a night I was actually kneeling at my bed, asking God, what should I do? Should I go for this? Should I go down to Atlanta, and should I audition? What should I do with my life? Because I was a new Christian at that point.
yeah,
Um, and God said, no, I want you to do what your music is that I'm going to give you. And it was clear as day. And if I've ever had like a God spoke to me experience, that was it. I know, like, it can get weird where people say, God told me, and sometimes God didn't tell you anything. It was just your
right.
own ego or whatever.
Yeah, or
Um,
feelings, or yeah,
yeah. But I had a sense that my purpose had changed, and that's what God wanted me to do. And that's when Damascus got started. And so anyway, that's a long way to get around it.
no, that's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. I love that because, yeah, I do believe yeah, God, of course, speaks to us in different ways. How we hear His voice, oftentimes we test that against Scripture, of course, but sometimes just we've had that in recent years here too with our family, with just hearing God, hearing Him actually tell us things, and it's true. It's hard to put into words how you know that. You can use the words, "Oh, it's a feeling" or something like that, but really there is a distinctive voice of God that I think we hear in different seasons of our life in particular. I think He's probably talking to us all the time. We finally get into tune with Him at certain
think
points.
that's what it is. I don't think that we're in tune with Him very often, and
Right.
we got so many of our own ideas that we aren't really open to whatever His thing was. But at that point in my life, I had a lot of emotional struggles at that point. I was borderline suicidal, and I needed an out. I needed help, and that's why I turned to God. And life changed drastically then. But it was I think I used to call it like the ton of bricks moment, because it was like a ton of bricks falling on me, because it was so obvious that that was the path I was supposed to take, and it wasn't the path that I wanted to take. It wasn't one that I come up with at all, but I ended up changing my life completely.
That's fabulous. God works in our lives in so many ways, and often despite ourselves, but He hangs
Definitely in
with
spite of ourselves.
Yes. And thank the good Lord for that, because when we walk away, He's still there to carry us in so many seasons of life, right? Until we come back around again.
I have not worked with any other major artists at this point in time. I have a friend of a friend who's a somewhat acquaintance with Carrie, and I've always wanted to meet Carrie, but it's one of those things where maybe you don't want to meet your heroes or something like
Your
that.
idols, yeah.
Yeah, because for so many years with Damascus, Carrie Livgren was he was such a huge influence on me.
Yeah.
Not just musically, but spiritually, watching his progression, how he came to Christianity through all these different things that he went through. And he had a huge impact on my life. And I read the book Seeds of Change many, many times. And so I know people who know people, and I work in an industry where somebody knows everybody in the industry. So, but I don't go out and seek it. I have played on some other artists' albums and things like that. And with, since my album came out, I've had quite a few requests for putting guitar solos and things like that, and vocals on other people's albums. And so I've done a fair amount of that. They haven't come out yet, but later this year, a few albums should be coming out with me on them as well. But no major people.
Yeah. That's okay. I mean, I was just kind of curious because of that Kansas connection. I thought, and John Elefante, I think, has a collection coming out now too. But correct me if I'm wrong. Did you contribute to the Stryper tribute?
I actually did.
Tell me a little about that.
I think I got that somewhere. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I don't have a copy yet. There it is. Yes, that's the one. So tell me about how that came about and how you got involved.
Cover. Very cool album cover.
It is. I really like it a lot.
Well, my album came out on Roxx Records.
Yeah.
And that came out last year. Right. And Bill Bafford from Roxx Records contacted me, I guess it was around December last year, and said, "Hey, we're doing this Stryper 40th anniversary thing for To Hell with the Devil. Would you be interested in being on it?" I was like, I'm not really a metal guy. But I remember when that album came out, and I can say I am friends with Oz Fox on Facebook, and we've had a few texts back and forth.
Yeah.
But I thought, why not? And so he sent me the song, which was Holding On. Yeah. And of course I listened to it. Great 80s hair metal tune.
Yeah.
Stryper, they were great at that. I saw them live. multiple times. And so it was kind of an honor to be part of it. But of course, I had to screw it up because I'm a prog guy. I'm not a metal guy.
So lean into your strength. That's right.
I'm going to have to throw something in there that's not in 4/4.
Good point.
And so I wrote a whole different, like the main refrain isn't what they did at all. It's something completely interesting to me, but maybe I wrecked it for other people. You know, I suppose some people might listen to it and go, why did he do that? What? Why couldn't he just do the song the way it was done? But I enjoyed it. It was fun. And it's great to see that it's out. It just came out a couple weeks ago. So
I know I haven't got a copy yet, so I haven't even heard it yet, but I look forward to picking that up because I want to hear what you did along with all the others on there too. But it's a very cool idea. I'm so glad to see that it came to fruition. It's a neat project, and what a cool way for other artists to give a spin on Stryper's,
I think that's a cool thing because it honors the guys from Stryper.
Right.
They really did a lot, and they changed the Christian market quite a bit because they weren't really in the Christian market, you know?
Right.
Because I remember when they came out, you know, and there's a lot of churches that were very dead set against these guys in spandex. And
yes, there was a lot of pushback back then.
I have to say that I did not wear any spandex in the making of that song. There was no spandex involved,
and none in Damascus either, right?
No. The closest I got was I wore these knee-high moccasins and these white, very tight white pants. And I remember we played at some place, and some lady came up to us afterwards, and he was like, "That is so wrong. What you're wearing is just so wrong." And like I'm fully clothed.
That's right. Yeah, it was the style of the time. You know,
I was 24 or 25, and I was in very good physical condition, and whatever.
Exactly. So, yeah, we'll give you a pass on that.
Thank you.
So again, kind of to your songwriting and lyrical content a little bit too. You know, how has that process kind of evolved? Because I know that it was collaborative in the Damascus days, right? You didn't write all the songs or the lyrics.
In Damascus, I did write all the music, except
you
for
did
one
write
song.
all the music.
Yeah,
except for one song. Okay, and lyrics too.
Lyrics. I started off writing most of the lyrics, but pretty soon I found that I was drying up as far as like I just couldn't churn out 12 great albums worth of lyrics a year. And so Dave jumped in, and Dave was very flowery and poetic. Sometimes you couldn't understand exactly what it was about, but there was a depth to what he wrote that, I still listen to him and go, that's pretty deep. If you actually knew what exactly he was saying and how that all fits together, it was an interesting thing. But I did write all the music for it.
Excellent. Okay. So looking back at your Damascus material all the way up to, in the process of with Undoubting Thomas now, how has your process evolved? How have you grown as an artist, as a writer, as a musician? And what, maybe have you enjoyed the most? I know there's been highs and lows and everything in between probably, but what have you enjoyed the most about kind of honing and refining your work over these years? What's been kind of
I think that just that states it right. Honing and refining is exactly what's been happening, because Damascus, I did whatever I wanted to do, and a lot of the songs were not just odd time signatures, but sudden abrupt changes between things, at least early Damascus. And I started getting better at like, how do I make this song flow so that we used to listen to a bit of Rush, and the thing that bugged me about Rush was that you start getting into this groove and then, now it's changed, and you can never stay with something. So through Damascus, I think I improved as a songwriter a great deal through that whole decade that I wrote for them. And when I met Heather and started writing again, through Shadowfields, it was pounded into me to write something that's memorable and catchy, because that was where Heather came from. And if I'd write something that was just like way out there, it's like nobody's going to catch this at all. What there has to be a reason behind the stuff. Is it to show off and to show that you can do it, or is there a purpose behind it? And so I think the refining part came through the last 20 years working with Heather, and working in a simpler form where it's not as there's not a lot of bombastic stuff happening in Shadowfields. There's some intricate stuff and some things that are sort of on the proggy edge, but for the most part, tried to write more concisely. And so getting into the Undoubting Thomas thing, I kind of was able to fuse both of them together, where I tried to write melodies and lyrics that actually said something and not too flowery. And the main goal was to make somebody feel something. Because if I wrote it, and my thinking was, if I wrote it and I don't feel anything about it, then why would anybody want to listen to this? And a lot of those words that I wrote for the album, many of the songs I cried while writing the words, and and a lot of it was just sitting here in the studio, microphone up. It's midnight. I'm trying to come up with ideas because I want to get this album done, and I have the ideas in my brain, but then they just started pouring out, and I definitely used Heather on a lot of things where she was gone for most of it. She had a family thing, so she was in Nashville for a few months, and while I was writing the album, but daily or every other day, I'd send her a sketch of where I'm at on something. I'd say, because I wanted her to hold me accountable, because I was like, I think I could write something musically that's going to be interesting, but I don't want to write anything lyrically that's embarrassing. Because I don't know about you, but I have a hard time listening to a lot of Christian music because it's really shallow. The lyrics are shallow, and they use Christian-ese, where unless you're raised in the church, you wouldn't even know what they're talking about. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that, because we all, whether we're a Christian or not, we share common experiences. And I just wanted to, through the album, I wanted to relay these common experiences that I'm having and how I'm dealing with them, and how God is overseeing this whole mess that is my life.
Yeah. No, I hear you. We can all relate to that, right? Our own lives, that we know there's things we failed on, things we're still working on, so much stuff that we really need to rely and trust on God more. Well, I know I said this, I think, in my top 10 list of 2025, but I love that opening overture that leads right into The Mirror. It was just such a kind of 1-2 punch right off the start for your album. It's just so strong. It's great. The Mirror is phenomenal. I want to talk about that music video in a minute. Of course, Any Wonder, that was, I think, the first music video you did for the album.
No,
might
I
have been
think
the first.
the first one, I think, was Love and Life.
Love and Life. Okay.
How bad is that the artist has to look up their own song names?
Well, I'm sure after a while, it's like all the words, all the lyrics, titles, everything, it starts to blur after a little while. But I love that. I love Save Me, too, the 6-track. I mean, I love that whole progression. I don't know what you call kind of the subheadings, the different acts, the different elements of that track, sinking down, slowly killing me. Sunshine, the reprise of Sinking Down. I just love the flow of that too. It's just a
Thank you.
phenomenal track. Dark Waters, similar type thing, is phenomenal, and of course that ending track, Another World, is similar. It's just, and that's the lengthy one, right? That's like 13
It's
minutes or something like.
is it 13 or
I think
14 minutes?
13 maybe.
Yeah, I don't have the. I can't remember how long it is.
Anyway,
It's long.
yeah, it's a great length though. Like it flows beautifully. It's true progressive rock in every sense, and nothing feels wasted either. It all just feels like it's just, I can keep listening to this. I'm not checking out at any point. So I love all that.
Thank you. That was important to me, that if I was going to write something long, that it would take you somewhere. There's a journey
Yeah,
through this whole thing, and there's different sections of it, and each section stands on its own, but you eventually get back to the main refrain that comes back in at the very end.
yeah. It's a beautiful work on so many levels. I know it's kind of got that tortured soul element to it too, but that's part of what I like about it. I think that's kind of what you were just talking about a second ago. Everybody can kind of relate. You can kind of feel drawn into it because, yeah, it's not just a Christian album. It's not a Christian album. It's an album, as you said, produced by and created by a artist who happens to be a Christian.
Yeah.
And so out of that depth and connecting into that, naturally are going to draw elements of faith and your faith and elements of scripture that are in there too. So it's really, really awesome. This is a tough question, of course, and I always hesitate to ask it of people. But for you, what are some of the strongest songs on there for you? It's like asking what's your favorite child, but what what are some ones that resonate with you?
They all do. They
Yeah,
all do. Um, and it just, there's certain sections. Overall, I'd say Another World. Um,
yeah,
just I like the different breakdowns of sections. I went into a whole humanity thing during this round and round thing where its voice is just coming in and out in a round. Um,
yeah,
about the hopelessness of society, and uh, that part of that song meant a lot to me. Um, the middle part of Save Me, the sinking down, um,
yeah,
and the slowly killing me and Sunshine part, those they meant a lot to me. They all mean a lot to me, but some
yeah,
still touch me a lot. And
yeah,
um, probably ultimately, though, um, it had to be uh, the solo section of Dark Waters
Dark
coming
Waters.
out to the last chorus of Dark Waters, where I take it up an octave.
Yeah.
And for me, I can't listen to that without crying still, because
Hmm.
I know what was in my heart when I wrote the song, just a
Hmm.
despair and a hopelessness, and just feeling like I'm sinking. That's why the album cover is water. It's
Water.
it's sinking. It's some
Yeah.
people think of water as like baptism. Like this is not the good water of baptism. This
Yeah.
is the dark water of an empty ocean, being alone in the dark, and not being able to save yourself. So most of the songs on there have a hugely deep thing to me, just to express that. And I didn't write it for the reason to be preachy in any way. I wrote it because it's what I was thinking and what I was feeling, but no other reason. Because obviously, writing progressive art rock, I'm not going to become a household name, and it's not going to sell a million copies. But it meant something to me, and I'm I hoped that some other twisted people like myself would be able to hear it and go, "Wow, I see myself in some of this stuff," and maybe it helps somebody else get through the darker times.
I love that. I think that's true. True artists operate on that level. Goes back to what you're talking about, where you're sharing your story, you're sharing a part of your journey, as the album title says, in the process of, right? And that's the journey. And to be able to just kind of, I know these words get overused, but authentically or genuinely share about that in just a real way that taps into your emotional level, your spiritual level, just the story that you're on is where art comes through the most. And I think that can convey meaning beyond what we expect. And as Christians, we entrust God's working through that process too, as we're striving to produce works of excellence. And that's how I really feel this album is. It's just so very good. And that tapping into an emotional core is certainly a big part of it, and I find it, I know you may find it strange or maybe not, but I find it very hopeful on a number of levels. I find elements of hope in there because I can relate to things in it. And I know it may not be even the way you intended things when you wrote them, but there are elements in there that I just really connect with in trials I've gone through. Yeah, Dark Waters is definitely one where you can just relate to this. Actually, going from Save Me to Dark Waters to me, and then Something Beautiful, and then right into the big prog rock epic at the end, Another World. There's something about all that part of the album. I can't turn it off at that point. It's like I'm going to go right on through to the end.
Well, I appreciate that, because I honestly worried that no one would want to hear it because it's dark.
Yeah.
And I remember giving it to my sister. My younger sister got it, and she says she kept it in her car for months, and that's the only thing she listened to. And she is not a depressing person. She is a happy, bubbly person, but she felt that the songs, she really loved them. And her favorite song was Another World. And you're thinking, all right, here's somebody who, that does not listen to any prog music, but likes this 14-minute piece of music. So that's very encouraging to hear that other people can relate to it and like it, even though it's a bit more moody than your average song.
Right. I think that's fine. Again, being the artist, being the tapping into who you are, God works through that whole process too, and just creativity in general. Speaking of which, I want to come back around to the music videos at the end here real quick, but I want to talk about processes a little bit here. Talk about the creative process again for a minute. Of course, this show is Tim Talks Christian Rock, but it's part of my Creative Christians channel, so I do like to look at creativity and faith, of course, and how we as Christians create things. God being the ultimate creative, of course.
Absolutely.
And who set that example of creativity for us. I want to talk just briefly about time, and you mentioned this earlier at the beginning, too, about time in the creative process. God's first act was to create, and he took 6 days to complete everything. Amazing stuff, the world, the universe, and everything, but he took 6 days to do it. He spoke things into existence. He could have done it just like that if he wanted to, but he took 6 days and then rested on the seventh, of course, and spoke everything into being. This is something I think creatives in particular tend to thrive on, that use of time, right? Maybe those who are, I don't know, less creative. I think everybody can, has creativity in them, but those are maybe less creative as far as creatives in that kind of sense, tend to want to do things, and the world tends to want to demand things, quicker, faster, tighter, shorter. And there's aspects of all that can be good, but there's also things that I think God showed us in that 6-day creation process to kind of help us slow down a little bit. And he enjoyed each day of creation too, commenting on it and then resting on the seventh day and kind of enjoying it, I guess you could say. There's other examples in scripture too. Noah building the ark, that could have been a project that could have, God could have just helped and turned that over in a day or something, but took across time for Noah to, long time for Noah to build the ark. My point being, how how is time an important part for you as a creative of your process? You know, progressive rock, of course, is known for its, as we just discussed, you know, sometimes lengthier tracks. The music kind of flows. It's one of the things I value about a lot of the Pink Floyd projects too, is that they got songs, you know, Echoes being one of it, just takes up a whole side of an album. How is that element of time, both in the creative process, you know, having time to create, but also in just allowing the music to kind of speak for itself? How is that for you? Why is that an important component, I assume, for you?
To answer the latter first,
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think that you know, at least our society is dumbed down in a bit. You know, like attention span is about 8 seconds. You know, and that's why
Yeah.
TikTok is really popular. I think it's a depth of soul that people are lacking something where they're just looking for an instant entertainment thing and not looking for something that actually fills up their soul and makes them a better them and challenges them to something more. And at this point in my life, I want to write whatever I write because it's going to be a legacy. It's what I'm leaving behind, and um, it takes as long as it takes. I don't care if it's a 3-minute song, which I have a lot of 3-minute songs, and I have, you know, a 14-minute tune on the album. It doesn't matter to me. I'm looking to say a specific thing, and I need to say it. It what was it from Amadeus? You know, like where that movie where the
Oh,
king
yeah.
says something about it has too many notes. What do you mean? It has exactly the right amount of notes. And
Yeah, exactly.
I feel that in that, you know, some people would want you to dumb it down. Why can't you cut out this? You know, it like reminds me of record labels when Damascus was around. Why can't you guys just write some pop music? That's not what we do.
Right.
This is what we do. This is who we are, and when we
Yeah.
want to be true to that, um, and also in order to achieve that, it does take a lot of time because to put together an epic piece of music, it's not a sit down and it's done in 15 minutes. You know, nothing on this album came together like instantly like that. It was a long thought process, experimenting with ideas. A lot of it's just sitting at a piano, and I have to have no time pressure. If I have zero time pressure, I know nobody's looking for me to do anything. I don't have to go anywhere. I know for the next 6 hours, I'm free. I can just sit and just come up with ideas. And I come up with a little bit of a piano idea. A thought comes into my brain. That sounds like it'd be about this. And then, all right, a lyric starts forming a little bit. And I'll carry on with the music and see where that goes. All the time, I'm recording little snippets on my phone, or I'll have the studio on, you know, and I'll be in the DAW and I'll be just recording whatever comes to my mind. Um, I don't consider it jamming because it's not. I don't do jamming. Um, I usually find jamming to be boring, but just ideas start flowing, and I'll go back and go, that was good except for that chord. Now I go back and I'll rework an idea and just keep. It's a time thing though. It takes a long time to put it together, and then it takes time for people to listen to it. And some people will be willing to listen to it. Some people won't have anything to do with that. But that's kind of the way life is, isn't it? You know. And I'd rather be lumped in with um, classical music that is long and takes you on a journey than to be, you know, like I'm going to rock and roll all night. That's
Right. Yeah,
doesn't mean
exactly.
anything to me.
That's phenomenal. Well, and I find that so true too. Yeah, we're so defined, especially in this day and age, by time constraints, and to kind of free things up as a creative and as an artist is to embrace some of that element of time. In business and like we all have to work within timelines and things like that. But it sure is nice to be creative and just have time to
Mm-hmm.
lean in, hear the voice of God too in our creative process, and let those things grow and flourish and develop, and how much greater works come out of that. And I ask all that because, again, I think there's a sense of that very clearly that comes across in the listening of your album, and in how that's conveyed through the music and through the lyrics. There's clearly time, effort, energy, excellence that's put into it, and that comes across when you listen to it, and you can tell a difference between that rather than one that was just churned out, an album that was churned out really quickly for a buck or whatever. So let me ask you this quick: how much does your creative space play into your work? Your studio or wherever you tend to do your work at. Maybe it's where you're sitting right now, but
it's exactly where I'm sitting. In my life, I'm not a vacation kind of guy.
yeah.
But this is my favorite place in the world. It's a 20 by 20 foot, 8-foot ceilings studio, and I do all creating here, and usually late at night when everything's quiet around the house, just to have time to think. And so the space has a lot to do with it. I think you have to be someplace where you feel relaxed. When I was in Damascus, like I said, my wife's family used to own a home in Upper Wisconsin, way up on the border of Michigan, up for the Upper Peninsula, and I would just take, some keyboards, a guitar, a recorder, and a stack of lyrics, and my vacation would be for 2 weeks, write an album, and because there was nothing to do up there. You're 20 something miles from the nearest town. So there was nothing to do except just relax, go on walks, and think and contemplate. And I think that's actually the place that I wrote the opening part of The Mirror. I think that was the last thing I wrote up there. And it took many years to come out. It was always in the back of my mind. It was always like, I wish I could do something with this. And finally, fortunately for me, that God opened a door and I was able to do it. But I love this space, and the studio's gotten more and more advanced over the years, and I have want for nothing at this point. We have the best of everything. So.
Chance I can, but when I start to turn away now, I can't remember who I am. Oh, am I a monster?
talk a little bit about the music video for The Mirror. That's the latest music video out. Very cool. I love it. Very creative. You've done a few videos before that, but what's it been like stepping into the creative process in that regard? Developing a video, shooting it, filming it, being on camera, and also directing it behind the scenes. What was that process like for you?
Crazy. And it's kind of like when you're writing an album, you're hoping that, I hope this isn't stupid, and I hope I'm not going to look like a total idiot. You got all these things in your back of your mind, and
Right.
How do I take this song that really means something to me, about looking at yourself in the mirror and coming to terms with who you really are? How do you take something that is that deep and make a video out of it without looking stupid,
Right. Yeah.
That's important. 'Cause how many, I remember I maybe remember, I used to like Billy Squier, when he was out in the 80s. And, I can't remember what song came out, and they did a video, and he was prancing around in a pink shirt and rolling around on a bed. It destroyed his career. And he'll say that.
Yes.
He'll say that video, which he had nothing to do with the creation of that video. He was just told what to do by the record company.
Exactly.
It destroyed his career. He was instantly uncool. And so I had that stuff in the back of my mind, like, am I going to do something that people are going to go, oh, that's totally cringy. Totally cringy.
That's when Tom jumped the shark right there.
Yeah. So I keep thinking, all right, the musical geeks are going to want to see a little bit of it actually being played. They're going to want to see a little bit of that. They aren't going to want to just see me. How about throw Pat the drummer, since he was the only other person on that song? Throw a little bit of him playing it, which was difficult, a lot more difficult than I thought, because I had Pat come in. He played the song, 4 or 5 months before, maybe more than that. No, it had to be more than that. Probably half a year before that, he'd played the song, and he has to come in and try to play all those parts exactly the way and I'm saying, Pat, you have to listen to that enough that you could play those fills so that when I cut to you, you're actually playing in time with this thing, And then he'd play a fill, and I say, that was a great fill. That wasn't what you played, though. And so we had to go back a couple times and say, all right, here's the fill. Play that fill, because that's the only times I'm going to cut you in on you is when you're playing a fill.
When you're matching up,
Exactly. So I had that in my mind, that I wanted some playing on it, but I also wanted to tell the story a little bit. And so I tried to shoot everything, or I shot most of it through a mirror. So I'd have a camera set up off on the side, hitting a mirror, then hitting me, and often there'd be a green screen in the background so that I could throw different images on there. And I also think on that video also, for all the parts for me, I believe I did the trickery thing. I learned from watching a Coldplay video. I think, I can't remember which Coldplay song it was. Maybe it was Yellow or something like that. Where he's on a beach and he's singing, but he's in time singing, but all his movements are in slow motion. And so I wanted to see, how do I do that? And so figuring out that, okay, you record at double speed and you play it back at half speed, and now your video is in time, but all your movements seem very exaggerated and slow. And so I wanted that, because I wanted that I wanted a dreamlike feel to it, because a lot of the album is dark and moody, and it needs that feel. And of course, I think the majority of it's in black and white as well. Maybe. I think it is, because
I think so. Yeah.
Black and white gives a certain mystery to it. As soon as you throw color on something, it becomes like, oh, judging by the color and the color temperatures, I can almost tell when that was made. Was that cut in 4K, how many frames per second, and blah, blah, blah. And so I wanted to make it as timeless as possible by, 24 frames a second, and shutter speed at 48, black and white, just moody, and trying to get the lighting right. And how do you get the lighting right where you can see things but not too much? And it's all tricky, but it was interesting.
I like what you did. I like it a
you.
lot. Yeah, I think it turned out really well. I think it's stylish. You're right. It's got a moodiness to it. It fits the tone and mood of the song, the emotion of the song too. You convey really well, of course. I just think it's a cool piece. I love the way it's done. I hope you do more videos because you did a good job on it.
Well, all right, you have to tell me. You'll have to send me a note and say, I wish you did a video on such and such song, and then I can work on a such and such song.
Okay. God, I've got a couple in mind.
I wouldn't be opposed to doing another video. Anything to keep some momentum going with the album. You work on something for a good half a year, and it was all I did. It was thinking about this and working on it and recording in it, and then getting it mastered, and working with Scott Waters for the artwork and everything. There's so much to it, and then you put it out, and you don't want to see it like, oh, it's gone in a day.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And you did that great making of series of videos too. 18 episodes of a series that really kind of gives a peek behind the scenes, which I love that too. You obviously been at least thinking about that while making it, and then to put those out. I thought that was really cool.
I love those kind of things where you can watch somebody where it's happening, when it's happening. I wished I would have had the foresight to actually record more of the clips of it actually going down. I got some clips of either Heather or Gary, the violin player, or Pat playing drums that were real right from the sessions. But for myself and things like that, when it's midnight and you're working on a part and you're just trying to come up with it, it's hard to say, I'm going to turn our camera on now, and because you don't know when that spark is going to come, and because that spark of the idea could happen in the next minute and a half, excellent, or it could be 4 hours from now, and you don't do you want to go through all the video for that? That's kind of hard.
Exactly, and it's tough when you're deeply enmeshed in one creative project to be thinking about documenting, which is another creative project in itself, at the same time that it's balancing two big creative projects, which I've thought about that with many of my own videos too. I should do a behind the scenes on this video. I've probably started doing that about 5 or 6 times and never get very far because the project itself is just so all encompassing usually. So it's like, oh, would have made a great behind the scenes, but I just don't have the time to do it.
Because you're so focused on the creative part of it that now to take you out of the creative process to become the engineer, or the director. And then you start thinking, oh, do I look stupid? How's my hair?
Yeah, exactly.
And you saw in those making of videos, my hair is horrible. It's midnight. And I'm when I get frustrated, I literally start pulling on my hair. And so my hair is like almost an afro, and I look like Einstein or something like that half the time. But
well, it's very real. It's very clear you're in you're in the midst of the trenches of creativity there. You look authentic for the part. So.
It tortured videos and everything. So
that's right. With the changes in technology, AI, and just kind of the changes in the music industry in general, you've obviously dealt with some, a lot of different tools too as a musician. Gear, technology. Now you're doing video and things like that. But how do you see your role as an artist or musician changing or evolving, into the future now and into the future as you deal with all the different changes in technology and AI and the like?
Honestly, that's something that's definitely I've been on my brain a lot because I'm on many forums with other engineers and producers, and we talk about that quite often. And somebody brought up the fact that, like AI is going to take over everything. In some ways, yes. I think the lowest rung, yes, AI is going to take over. Even like making jingles and things like that.
Right.
The time of being able to be a jingle writer might be over, because AI can write it, and it can write it in a matter of seconds. And but the thing that AI can't do is it can't be human, and it can't create. It doesn't create. What it takes learned things, and it will incorporate learned things into whatever you're asking for. But it's not coming out of nowhere with an idea, where a human, I'm going to put things together that shouldn't go together, or you wouldn't think logically to put them together.
Yeah.
But AI can't do that because it isn't a thinking thing, and it doesn't have a soul. And so it's not going to come up with something completely original. Everything it does is derivative. It can't, it's an impossibility for it to come up with an original idea. To some people, they might say, oh, that's very original. I would, I have a few artists that I work with that are dabbling in AI at this point. I'm not really crazy about the idea, because I mean, it's not you anymore. And it comes down to, what's the point? What do you want from this?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a recording artist at whatever cost and have AI write the songs for me, even if it's a better song than I wrote. What did that net me? It got me nothing, because for me, Heather and I talk about this often. What's the payoff? The payoff is the song. It's the writing of the song and completing the song. It's not even if people like the song. That wasn't the payoff. Wasn't it whether it's liked or popular? It was that we did this song. We had nothing a couple hours ago, and now we have this thing. So AI, for some people, they'll use AI because I think they want to be influencers more than they want to be an artist. And I'm not interested in being an influencer. I could tell you about my hair products all day, but I don't think anybody's going to be interested.
You're going to have the Undoubting Thomas line of hair products soon?
Absolutely. You can come out with anything these days. I can get some Chinese company to develop my skincare products and all that stuff, and it'd probably sell better. But you've probably talked to other artists that I was talking with Oz Fox from Stryper on a chat the other day, and we were bemoaning the fact that for many artists, especially artists that are touring, the way they make their money is through merch sales. And I've talked to other guys who were like, I can't remember who it was, a bass player from another band that I know, and he was saying, I get to play bass on the side, but really I'm a t-shirt salesman. And unfortunately, that's what it's come to at this point, where merch sales are supporting our bad habits of music.
Yeah, so I know, like, even with streaming and things like that, you artists have to always deal with that in terms of trying to make any money off of streaming. Have you had to deal with that yet so far? I mean, with the solo album, or what's that been like?
Solo album and with especially with Shadowfields. Heather and I have been, obviously this is our 20th year that we've been working together. We used to make a fair amount of money off of streaming and digital sales and things like that, and it's gotten harder and harder and harder. And Spotify has changed their payouts. Unless you've got money to force them to pay you, they're just not going to pay you any money anymore, because now they won't pay you for the stream. So, all right, you're supposed to get like 0.3 of a penny for each stream, in theory. Total lie anyway. But you're supposed to get that, but they're not going to give that to you unless that song got played 1,000 times that month. And it's fine for a large artist that has millions of fans or whatever, but even at that, you don't know if any of this is even true. because there's ways to play the system. And there's a lot of people that look extremely popular that couldn't draw 10 people at a club, you know?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's all smoke and mirrors, I think, at this point. And just like news, who knows what's real anymore?
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. And you could see fake videos about whatever, you know, and AI has gotten so good at making fake videos that sometimes it's like, did that really happen?
Yeah, is that real? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, coming from an IT background that I have, it's, you know, we have a policy about email. Trust nothing, zero trust. Trust nothing that comes to you. Yeah. And it has to be that same way in life right now with AI and what you're seeing, because you can't trust anything that you see. It could be true. No. It could not be true. And it could even be one of your favorite people saying something, but you don't know what it is, if they're saying it is true, because if they've been bought off or whatever, you don't know anything.
What is truth? We come back to that question now. We're asking that now more than ever, you know, where journalism has devolved into there is no journalism really. And yeah, news is, you know, fake news and all sorts of other things in between, everything under the sun. What is real? And maybe it's a drawing back, a way of God kind of helping to draw us back to truth. Is there's only one truth, you know, and that's through Jesus Christ, of course. So,
and staying true, you know, like with writing these albums, you know, that's AI is not doing that, you know, and all we can do is, you know, take the truth that we know and try to live it out and then express it through art.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what do you got up ahead, Tom? What any future projects, collaborations, or you know, what's the next step for you?
I've had a number of people ask if Undoubting Thomas was going to hit the road. You know, some people in California have asked, you know, are you going to make it out there? And I tried to get into a couple festivals, didn't really pan out because I don't know if people know where to fit us, you know. So I don't know that Undoubting Thomas is going to get a chance to play out on the level that I wished it could. Obviously, I had to find guys that could play the music and go out. Pat's all set, you know, and get Heather and Gary or something like that. But I don't have a band for that really. So that one, I'm working on another album for Undoubting Thomas. I'm on a couple songs in at this point. For me, right now, the main focus is the 8th album for Shadowfields. Where, like I said, I think we've written 9 out of the 11 songs we want to put on the album. And I spent the entire day with Pat yesterday. He was over playing drums on the new Shadowfields album. And the guy's insane. He got 5 songs done in one day. Never had that happen before.
That's phenomenal. That's a lot in one day. Wow.
Yeah, and it's cool because, you know, I can just say, well, I don't like any of that. Can you change it and do this? You know, for some people, changing something midstream is like, you mess with my brain. Now I've have to rethink this, and I'm going to need to go study it some more. Yeah. But Pat has so much experience, and he's played with so many people for so many years. Because he was a progger back in the 70s, you know, touring. And so he's able to just roll with it. I can throw anything at him and he'll do it instantly. So having a great time with that. Shadowfields will be on, I think we have 2 tours this year. Excellent. And maybe a couple local shows or whatever. Where you're in Texas, right?
I'm in Austin, Texas area. Yeah.
We played, Shadowfields played at South by Southwest one year. We didn't play in the festival. We played on 6th Street.
Yeah.
The Insanity.
The Insane 6th Street, yeah.
we swore after that experience that we are only going back to Austin if we're playing on a stage actually in South by Southwest, because that was absolute craziness. And
I
it was
can
so
imagine.
Loud. And we were playing a show, I think we played 2 or 3 shows the day that we were down there, because we were on a tour. We were in Oklahoma and a bunch of other places, and we were playing, and you know what it's like there. And there's like 20 bands playing on the same street, all like with the windows and doors open.
Sounds
it's so
everywhere.
noisy. And apparently a fight broke out right in front of the place we were playing, and the doors and windows are all open, and the cops came in and pepper sprayed, and Heather and I are in the middle of a song, and we're like, I can't breathe.
Oh my God.
And you're like, what happened? And I was like, wow, I'm glad I don't get pepper sprayed on a regular basis. That was pretty terrible.
Oh man, I believe it. And Austin used to be, it used to be called, the music capital of the world or whatever. But back when Stevie Ray Vaughan was here and alive and well and playing, this place had such a great identity. We had the Archangels here, we had Marsha Ball, we had W.C. Clark, we had all these great, of course. Stevie's brother Jimmy Vaughn, who's still around playing, but it had such a feel to it and such a character to it, and the music here was so rich and had a certain style that really felt Austin-y, and then the city started to grow and take off, and now 6th Street is just a mess, and I don't know, I don't think we have a defined kind of style of music anymore. It's kind of evaporated.
Does any place have a defined style? Because I would even think that we've played Nashville many times, and you'd think that Nashville was all just country music, but it's not country, country music at all. And so I don't know. Everything's getting diversified, and just I don't know. In some ways, a little bit of the specialness is gone. But I was just wondering where you were, just in case we make it back down to Texas, because we played Austin. You ever come to Dallas, Beaumont.
All of those are easy shot for me. So if y'all ever come back here to Texas, I can easily make a drive. Most places are like, all the big cities are like within 3-4 hours drive. And I'm usually going between all them anyway for video shoots and stuff like that. Got family in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So yeah, if you ever come here, I'll have to watch out for that, or let me know. Shoot me a note, and I'll come see you.
Because I need to have one person in the audience. So
absolutely, I'll be there going, woo! I'll bring albums to have you autograph and all that sort of stuff. Well, Tom, thank you so much for sitting down, chatting today. I've had a blast. I could go on for another hour. I've got at least another hour worth of questions. But maybe we'll save that for a good follow-up interview as you get this second Undoubting Thomas album underway.
Well, maybe I'll do another video and we can get it out. But you have to send me your ideas for a video.
Absolutely, I'll do that for sure. But again, just to reiterate, I love this album, Undoubting Thomas. In the process of fantastic album, came out last year through Roxx Records. Highly encourage everybody to pick this up if you haven't already. I do have an album review that I've been working on for it. I was waiting to kind of put out in sync with when this interview here comes out. So I am going to do that. But for those who have followed my channel and seen my top 10 of 2025, you'll know this is on that list. Very, very close to the top. And I love it. It's a fantastic album, Tom. Love your work. Of course, those that I mentioned earlier, Damascus Anthology is out through Roxx Records too. Another great pickup for sure. Got 4 albums, actually 5, because you put that 5th album out in 2024, right?
Yeah, all the demos from the 5th album. Bill decided that I sent them to him. I said, do you want to release this? This would have been the 5th album. It's all just demos. Some demos are just boombox material.
Right.
And he said, yeah. So it's there.
I love it. It's a great anthology. I've listened to it all the way through once. I need to really punch in more on a bunch of material, and I look forward to doing that. I've been too busy listening to all of in the process of, but I will get back around to this one again. But anyway, love all your music, Tom. Great stuff. So excited to keep up with you and what you're doing. I'll put links in the description here of this interview too to all of Tom's stuff for Undoubting Thomas, Damascus, and Shadowfields as well too. So anyway, any closing comments? Anything? Any last word you want to leave us with?
Just thank you so much, Tim. It's been great. I like the way you do interviews because it's just a conversation. We're just friends having a good time.
Absolutely. That's how I like to do it too. I just like to chat. I like to have some sense of structure, but I don't want to overstructure anything. So it's a blast just sit down and I feel honored to be able to connect with people like you. It's phenomenal artists and talents and musicians that I just love to be able to sit and chat and mine. And I learn from you all, and I hope others do too watching this. So it's been a blast, Tom. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.